What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to Let Me Be Frank, a podcast about movies. Hope you had a good week. Once again, it feels like forever since I've gotten to talk to y'all. It's been quite the week. I'm looking outside at some pretty crappy weather, and we are full board heading into winter. But before we get too far into the show, I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for giving me your time once again. If you're on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. If you're on Spotify, follow, click that bell, comment. If you're on Apple Podcast, review, rate the show. That way we can get it out to more people, start busting through these algorithms. And also, I want your feedback. I want to know, how am I doing? What can I improve? What should I stop doing? Once again, today I'm going to try not to hit my table, which I know I do often, but we're trying stuff out here. We got a pretty good one for you here today. First, we're taking a trip to Germany, to the Alps, where we might be going a little bit insane. And then after that, we're going to see if a classic film can change my mind. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are talking Cuckoo, and for our main event, we're talking Jaws. Now, Jaws, I understand people believe that it's a classic. I've only seen it one time when I was a kid on the Warner Brothers network in New York. That would be Channel 11. I think it's called CW now. I saw it. I didn't really like it, didn't really get it, but that was also a very long time ago. So since it is available and it is considered a horror movie, which I never really put it in the horror category, but hey, that's me. I decided, since we're in the almost towards the end of Horror Watch 2024, that I would give it another shot and see if this movie is really as good as everybody says it is. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to get into 2024's Cuckoo. Movie opens with a family driving on a country road. The family consists of Luis, not Luis. See, a lot of these movies are recycling names. It's Louis, Beth, Alma, and Gretchen. Gretchen seems to be like a troubled teenager that just kind of hates everything at this point. She expressed her hate for her sister, her stepsister Alma, because she is mute and cannot speak. I know that seems extremely insensitive, but she's a teenager. It doesn't really take much explanation. Why does this bother her so much? I have no idea. But she doesn't want to she doesn't seem like she wants to be doing whatever the family's doing right now. They arrive at a resort, and apparently the parents are supposed to be designing another part of the resort. This resort is in Germany. It's in the German Alps, and it is very secluded. There we go again. If you've been following Horror Watch 2024, you've noticed that some of our most dastardly movies have been out in the middle of fucking nowhere. I don't understand what it is. Why do y'all want to live so far away? I get it. I don't want to be near people either, but there is a limit. I need to be able to look out and see another house after the family settles in. So, okay, I'm going to say this guy's name. I'm probably going to get it wrong a couple of times, but it's Kurish. Okay, it's German. I even listen to pronunciations online. I apologize if I get his name wrong. So after the family settles in, Kurish, owner of the resort, offers Gretchen a job doing reception work. She agrees because she wants to get money to move away. She will often make calls to her mom expressing how much she doesn't want to be where she is. So when she starts training at the front desk, she is with a woman named Beatrice. Beatrice seems to have been there a long time and begins to argue with Kurish when she finds out that she still has to do majority of the closing. During this argument, a woman in the lobby starts to throw up. Beatrice tells Gretchen that this happens quite often. Red flag number one. Gretchen gets off work towards the end of the night and she wants to ride her bike back home, but the owner insists on giving her a ride. Gretchen obviously doesn't want to take the ride, and I wouldn't either because I don't know you, man. I don't know this area. I would like to not turn into a missing person. So she elects to find a different way home. One night, Beatrice wants to go out on a date, so Gretchen closes alone. Then a woman named Ed comes in to get a room for a night. Ed is from Paris, and her and Gretchen talk for a little bit before a woman in the lobby throws up again. Different woman, almost in the exact same spot as the woman earlier. The woman grabs a drink and chugs it in a zombie like state and staggers off. Ed goes to check on her, and Gretchen attempts to do the same, but the phone begins to ring, and it's Courage on the other end. He starts speaking in German until he realizes that Gretchen is on the phone and not Beatrice. He tells Gretchen to immediately go and lock the doors and that he is coming to pick her up. So he sounds a bit worried, but Gretchen just kind of blows him off because she wants to go check on the guest that, took off after throwing up. When he tries to convince her, she hangs up and then she takes off after Ed and our unknown woman. But by the time Gretchen gets outside, everything goes quiet. The owner, Courage, is calling over and over again. Gretchen ignores the phone and she begins to get a very eerie feeling. She pulls out her butterfly knife and then heads back inside to turn the lights off and close up. She hops on her bike and takes off. As she disappears into the darkness, Courage pulls up frantically looking for her. Now she is all alone in a place she is not familiar with, riding her bike with music blasting in her ear. Now, mind you, this road is dark as shit. I mean, this road is super dark. Off in the distance, we see something running really fast, about 1,000 feet away from Gretchen. Eventually, Gretchen looks down at her shadow as she passes the streetlights, which are few and far between. She sees her own shadow and then all of a sudden sees another one. She looks behind her and sees a woman with a long tan trench coat and sunglasses running behind her, reaching out for her. She takes off on her bike and leaves the woman behind. She then ends up at a hospital. She tries to open the door, but it's locked. She presses the intercom button and then screams for them to let her in. They buzz her in just as the woman gets there. Gretchen turns to run, but the second door does not open and she hits her face on the door, splitting her fucking head open. By the time the nurses come out and Courage shows up, the woman chasing her is gone. Now, this scene was very intense just because it kind of comes out of nowhere. You're not really expecting this woman to be as close to her as she was, but this was very well done. The music, the atmosphere, everything created this feeling of uncertainty. Once Gretchen has been let inside, she runs into her dad after she gets stitches. Alma, Lewis, and Beth are there because Alma is having seizures. Gretchen tries to tell her dad what's going on, and he is concerned, but he seems more concerned about Alma, which drives Gretchen further away from the family. The next day, Gretchen plans on stealing money from her job to run away, but she is approached by police investigator Henry Lando about the woman that was chasing her the previous night. Gretchen does not want to talk to him because Ed is standing behind him. Henry asks Gretchen to meet him later so they can discuss the incident. She agrees and he leaves. Ed is there with some weed, of course, and a smile. She asks Gretchen to run away with her. Gretchen steals the money from her job and takes off. While they are driving, things keep happening to Gretchen, where a specific moment in time will repeat over and over again just before something bad happens. This starts to happen and takes a couple times for Gretchen to catch on. But when a woman appears in the road, Ed swerves and the car violently flips over. Gretchen wakes up with her face covered in blood. Ed is laying outside the car. The figure walks up and throws Ed like a cartoon character, like 1,000 feet away. And it turns out it's the woman with the glasses and the coat. Now we can see through her glasses to her burning red eyes. She bends over and tries to reach in the car while making a very hideous noise. It's almost like a chirping sound until a car pulls up and we hear gunshots ring out. Gretchen wakes up in the hospital with her sister and her dad sleeping in the next bed. Later on, Gretchen and her dad have a huge argument. Later that night, police investigator Henry shows up to Gretchen's hotel room. He tells her that he believes her and he is also looking for the same person when she gets released from the hospital to come and find him. It also turns out that Ed is still alive. Gretchen eventually goes to see Henry, and he tells her about the gruesome murder of the last couple to have contact with this woman. He also does not want anyone to know about the investigation. Right now he doesn't know who to trust, and he has theories about what's going on, so he wants to keep everything on the hush until he's able to completely prove what he's thinking. Gretchen remembers that the woman that threw up in the lobby stayed in the pink resort. It's a pink building called the Lover's Nest. So Gretchen and Henry conduct a stakeout of the Lover's Nest, and it turns out the person that Beatrice has been seeing is a local police officer. Beatrice and the officer are occupying the nest when the chirping starts and time begins to repeat. Then we get a horrifying look at the woman in the sunglasses. Henry leaves Gretchen in their hiding spot because she falls asleep, and he creeps up on the house to try and kill the woman in the sunglasses. Right before he is able to take a shot, Gretchen makes a noise and causes him to miss. Eventually, Gretchen makes her way to Beatrice. Lando discovers that she is still alive, and that would be Beatrice. So, this scene is also very intense because this is our first real look at whatever this is. And for me, when something is walking into a room, that reveal can be very unnerving if done properly. Like if you've ever seen the movie It Follows, when the big man walks in the room, it's so casual and so like nothing can stop me from doing this. Made it creepy. This one was it was so it was like they were skipping 2 or 3 frames of it walking in, which made the movement very awkward and non-human like, which made it extremely creepy to watch, especially because we don't know. All we see is the woman in the sunglasses, which it looks like a normal person, but we know that it's not. So, and the way they built this up, the tension and the anticipation of seeing what this whatever it is going to look like made this scene work very well. And then everything that happens within this lover's nest, everything just worked. This movie so far is it grabs you, and just the mystery and intrigue keeps you from wanting to do anything else. You want to know how this is going to end. Next, Gretchen wakes up in a bed at her family's house. So this is the night after she and Henry leave the lover's nest. She goes where everyone else is. That would be Kurish, Lewis, Beth, and Alma. She watches Kurish talk to Alma about something. She starts to ask him questions like, why did you bring us here? Why do we have to live here? And when he gives some shady ass answers, this is what started the switch for me to Team Gretchen. Because when he starts giving these like weird answers, these like answer non answers, instead of just accepting it like people mostly do in horror films, she points out that these answers are fucking shady. She's like, why would you answer it like that? Like, is nobody else finding this shit weird? And I'm like, yeah, parents, adults, people who should have far better reasoning abilities than this, teenager that's going through a whole bunch of stuff. So later on in the scene, a box of stuff gets delivered that belongs to Gretchen's mother in the house that is in the United States. Gretchen finds out that her dad sold the house and all the stuff got shipped to her. Gretchen punches Lewis in the face and then goes into her room. She dumps the box out and starts to listen to the answering machine that she had been leaving messages on. It turns out that Beth has been calling, leaving messages asking Gretchen's mom to please call her daughter, that it would make her feel a lot better, and that she's welcome to visit them whenever she wants. She's starting to, Beth is starting to grow on us. She looks like she's attempting to be one of the good guys. When Gretchen is done, she goes back into the common area to find that everyone is gone except for Kurish. He tells her that it's time for her to leave and that he will give her money and drive her to the train station, and she can go wherever she wants. He asks Gretchen to leave a note telling the family that she's leaving. The note then said, I am leaving, do not try and look for me. They get in the car, and then Courage takes Gretchen to his home. Now, this is where things start to get even more shady because he could have just brought the money with him. When they walk through the front door of Courage's home, as Gretchen makes a right turn to follow him down a hallway, a man suddenly appears behind her and begins to follow them in the hallway. We see Police Inspector Lando on his knees with an officer standing behind him. Lando is not allowed to say anything. When he does, the officer simply places the barrel of his pistol in the back of his neck. Courage then leads Gretchen to where the money is being held. You can't see me, but I'm throwing up quotes. So when they walk in the house, okay, he says, "Oh, the money is in this room back here." She follows him in. Now, hindsight being 2020, I'm standing by the front door. You can go ahead, call me a cab, bring me the money, and I'll stand outside and wait for that shit. He walks her into a room that's obviously a pool area, except the pool is empty and it's just a bed, a nightstand, a lamp, and a table with glass windows all around it. By the time she begins to notice that something is really wrong, she turns around and he sprays something in her face. The spray temporarily stuns her, preventing her from leaving the room, and he calmly walks out and locks the door. Gretchen is now trapped in the pool house. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Alma has another seizure and is being looked at by a doctor, but Beth is starting to believe that something is off. Going back to Gretchen, she is still trying to find a way out of the pool. Courage begins to speak through a PA system that he plays a flute, like a certain note on a flute, and wants to study her because he's a preservationist. That's what he called himself. One of those people who seems to be under his spell begins to walk slowly into the pool room. The screen starts to shake, and we start to hear that chirping noise until the person appears in the pool with Gretchen. Gretchen and the woman have a very weird encounter. Then she passes out on the bed. That would be Gretchen. Curish and the officer enter the pool area with headphones on. It seems that he has control over whatever these things are. Eventually, after a long exposition from Courage, Lando escapes and kills Eric, the police officer that was protecting Courage. So when I tell you there's a lot of exposition in this part, there's a lot. Courage explains everything that's going on to Lando. He then comes into the pool house and shoots Courage and the creature. Lando and Gretchen then head to the facility where they create these monsters. They are preparing Alma to see her true mother. They only use real women as surrogates for whatever they're creating. Beth has to be taken away because the closer the true mother gets to the surrogate mother begins to get violently ill. Lando plans on killing the monster of all these creatures, but it turns out Courage is not dead. He comes in realizing they just lost two people who can bring this entire experiment down, and he begins killing everyone inside the facility and destroying evidence. Gretchen eventually gets a one-on-one with the head monster, the woman in the sunglasses. After a lengthy battle, she is able to surprise the breeder, because that's what Courage calls her, and kills her. Gretchen then goes to find Alma, but Lando and Courage are shooting at each other, both trying to get to Alma. One wants to kill her and the other one wants to breed her. Gretchen gets to Alma first and she quickly makes up with her. Gretchen gets both of them on an AV cart with both men pointing guns at them. So imagine this. Lando's on one side, Courage is on the other. The girls, Alma and Gretchen, are hiding out in the room and they have a quick little heart to heart because Alma knows that Gretchen fucking hates her. So they make up real quick and she puts her on this cart. Gretchen is using herself to shield Alma from Lando, and Gretchen is also using Alma to shield herself from Courage. And they slowly walk up the middle and they eventually are able to get out because neither one of them want to kill and hurt the wrong person. Alma begins to do the mating tweet, freezing both men in place. When they both leave the room, Courage and Lando both kill each other. Gretchen and Alma eventually make it outside to safety. And that is essentially how the movie ends. They get out, they get in the car, and they kind of just take off. Overall, I thought this movie was very, very good. I enjoyed it. It kept me engaged. The long exposition between Kurish and Lando kind of lost me just because it was a lot of information to kind of dump out at once, and it wasn't done in any sort of exciting fashion. Maybe that's another, I need to sit down and watch it when I'm not trying to take notes on it. But I would give this movie a solid like 7 out of 10. This was a pretty good one. I'm looking forward to seeing it again when it comes out on a streaming service where, I'm just kind of watching it just to watch it and I'm not taking notes and trying to get ideas and stuff out. But that is 2024's Cuckoo. I highly recommend you see it. It's available, I believe, on Amazon at home, the little where you can rent it. I think it's like 24 bucks, or you can just wait until it comes out on a streaming service. Either way, I believe you're going to be happy with this film. And just a quick piece of business before we move on to our main event today. If you are listening to this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, even if you're on YouTube, I highly encourage you to go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm going to be doing so every movie I watch isn't going to make it onto the show. Some of them are either not good enough or I just don't really have the time to trust me. If I didn't have a regular 9 to 5, I would be dropping multiple episodes a week, but I do have a regular 9 to 5. So I'm doing what I'm going to be calling 60-second movie reviews, where some of the movies that won't make the long form podcast, I will do a 60-second review on YouTube Shorts. Go head on over to YouTube. It's still same name of the show. Let Me Be Frank, a podcast about movies. Subscribe, click the bell, comment if you want to suggest movies or anything. That is going to be the best place to do so. I don't really use any other form of social media outside of YouTube. And if you want to leave comments on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please do. But that YouTube channel is going to be the easiest place to reach me for suggestions and criticisms and things like that. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are moving on. We're moving on to a classic. Apparently, that's what people told me, that it was a classic, and I didn't really get it. I was like, it's a movie about a shark attacking people. If you don't want to get bit, stay the fuck out of the water. that was that was my attitude. I watched Jaws, maybe when I was like between 8 and like 11 years old, one of those years, and didn't really care all that much. Didn't really find it all that scary, but I was also a kid. Sharks didn't bother me. I just knew to stay the hell out of the water. But now that I've grown up, I'm a man now, and I have a deeper appreciation for storytelling, for atmosphere, for acting, for practical effects versus CGI, all those intricacies that you learn as you grow up. I wanted to see if this movie could give me, maybe I could get more out of the movie. Let's put it that way. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for our main event. This is the official review for Jaws. Bonfire with a bunch of teenagers having a good time. Two of them, a boy and a girl named Chrissy, slink off to go skinny dipping, but the guy is too drunk to make it. He gasses out because she takes off running. And mind you, like running through sand ain't some easy shit, so she's in shape. He gasses out and then passes out on the beach. Meanwhile, Chrissy is butt ass naked in the water. Poor guy. This is taking place late at night. They get a really beautiful underwater shot of Christy swimming in the moonlight. Next thing we know, she gets jerked down into the water. She starts to panic. It happens again, but this time more violently. Then she is getting thrashed around while screaming and then goes under for good. So when I first watched the movie, I didn't remember it starting this fast. I don't know how much it may have gotten cut for television because, like I said, I was between 8 and 10. I'm going on 40. So I don't remember it all that well. But this was a good opening scene. And they didn't really take a lot of time. Like, not a whole lot of jaw jacking. Next, we meet Michael Brody, the new sheriff of Amity. This town looks very nice and the weather is beautiful. So this is a beach town. And when I tell you I was envious of them, I watched this in the summer and I was still envious of just how great their weather looked. Their weather looked phenomenal. Brody learns about Chrissy, so he goes to the beach to investigate. They find her sticking out of a pile of sand with crabs all over it. Brody wants to close the beach because that's what makes sense. But the townsfolk don't want that because that's how they make their money. So, for those of you who live in a big city and who have never lived in a small town, I've lived in both. The small town I lived in had a factory just on the outside of the town, maybe a few miles away. It was, I believe, it is the Mead or At a Glance, one of those two companies, and they make notebooks, calendars, notebooks for kids, everything that the composition notebooks that you use in school. That's where a lot of that stuff was made. If that factory were to shut down, 90% of that town would be out of work, which is a horrifying thing to happen. So I understood a little bit when the townsfolk were saying if the beach isn't open, people aren't going to come here. There's no other reason to go to that town outside of the fact that they have a very nice exclusive beach and the 4th of July holiday is coming up and that's their biggest season. So I kind of understood that, but also I see it from Brody's side where you don't want your town to be linked to like, hey, if you go there, you're probably going to get eaten by a fucking shark. Because guess what? I'm not going. I'm not bringing my family there if I know there's a chance we can be eaten by a shark. You see how that? So I see both sides of the coin, but I feel like closing it and taking care of this problem would encourage people to come more because they know that you have their safety in mind. So everyone goes back to the beach. Brody is on edge. Then a little boy named Alec is attacked by the shark next. Instead of closing the beach longer, they only closed it for 24 hours in hopes that fishermen can catch and kill it. So the Amity PD closed the beach. And because of Miss Kistner putting a bounty on the shark, fishermen from all over have come to collect it. Miss Kistner is the mother of Alex, the boy who was killed by the shark. Now the harbor is overrun with overzealous people who think they have what it takes to kill the shark. To hunt and kill sharks is not an easy thing. If it was, they would have just done it straight away. But now you have a harbor full of a bunch of wannabe tough guys and drunks heading out on the water, putting themselves in needless danger to try and collect on the money that Miss Kishner offered for the head of the shark. Finally, Mr. Hooper from the Oceanography Institute shows up to help. Matt examines the bucket of remains of the first girl that was killed by the shark and is upset to find out that they did not call the Coast Guard or look in the water themselves. Now, all of these fishermen are out hunting the shark and they got one, a tiger shark, which is still rare for those waters. Matt wants to cut the shark open to see if this is the shark that they're looking for. Miss Kishner shows up and blames Brody for not closing the beach after the first killing, not knowing that he tried. She gives him a good old slap, which we all know is wrong, but the mayor, who is the one who really decided not to close that damn beach, is standing there and let it happen and didn't take any of the blame. This guy is a piece of shit. He is. This whole movie is going to be because of him. And when Matt wants to cut the fish open right there on the dock to examine the insides, he keeps them, the mayor, keeps him and Brody from doing that because he's afraid that if the little boy's body parts are in there, they don't want, this kid's body parts spilling all over the boat launch, which means he should have given them a more private place to go do it, but instead he chose to try and save face. Matt goes to Brody's house and brings wine, always a welcome gift. As they have a couple of drinks, they decide to go and cut open the stomach of the shark to make sure that they got the right one. To no one's surprise, it is not the right shark they are looking for, so they go out into the water to find it. It takes Matt a long time to convince Brody to get his ass on a boat. Now, Brody, for someone who took a job as a police officer in a beach town, does not like the ocean. He doesn't get in the water. He doesn't do any of that. They go out and discover a boat that belongs to someone who lives in the town of Amity. There is a big hole in the bottom from whatever bit through the bottom. They also pick up a shark's tooth out of the same hole, but Matt drops it when the body of the owner floats through the hole. So the person who owned the boat was killed, his body floated up, scaring the shit out of Matt, and he drops the shark tooth. The next day, they try to convince Mr. Vaughn to close the beach and hire someone to kill the shark. Infuriatingly enough, Mr. Vaughn does not do that. He blows them off, even though the experts are telling him that a bunch of people are going to die if they don't do something now. So, like, I think it's maybe a day or so before their 4th of July celebration. Mr. Vaughn, the mayor, does not want to close the beach for any reason. He doesn't want to attempt to save anyone's life for any reason. He is okay with allowing people to get into shark infested waters simply so they can continue to make money. So now it is the 4th of July and the beaches are open, but no one is going in the water. Mr. Vaughn pushes someone he knows to go and get in the water. So, despite how much Mr. Vaughn, Mayor Vaughn, has tried to prevent people from being too scared, they already heard about the 2 people that were murdered at the beach by the shark. So now there's a beach. I mean, once again, weather phenomenal. People are on the beach. Kids are having a somewhat good time, but not a single person has gotten in the water, as they shouldn't. I wouldn't have even been there. I would have found somewhere else to go and spend my time. But he convinces a friend of his, well, not convince, he pushes, not literally, but figuratively, pushes his friend to get into the water. There is a ton of extra security, and all of a sudden, a fin appears out of nowhere. Everyone rushes out of the water. A couple of people get hurt, but it's just some stupid kids pulling a prank on everyone. Then someone sees the real shark, and it's headed towards the pond, which is really shallow part of the beach where Brody's kids are playing. One person is attacked by the shark. This is where we get to see our first glimpse of the beast, and he looks great. It looks really good. Now, I'm going to pause right here. Throughout my cinematic life journey, I've learned to have a real big appreciation for practical effects. For those of you who don't know, practical effects are effects that are real, not done on a computer. A lot of what we see now is CGI, computer generated images. You see it a lot in the Marvel movies. It helps people fly. They use them they use them a lot in films. I don't always like the way it looks because unless you spend a lot of time and a lot of money on it, like the last few Marvel movies have had bad CGI. I mean, you can see that it's clearly horseshit, and it's like they didn't even really try to make it look better, which is a little bit frustrating. And then you have movies that do it right, but there's something about a practical effect that you know is there. I know it's harder to do, it's more time consuming, but if this shark were CGI like the Megalodon in the Meg movies, it wouldn't have had the same impact. This shark looked crazy because you know it's there in front of them and they're reacting to this gigantic thing that looks like a shark. Now, everybody knows that the shark wasn't working properly for this movie. That's why we didn't see it as much. But I actually think it ended up working out for the best. Eventually, they get everyone out of the water except for the guy who was attacked. Brody's son is shook up and ends up going to the hospital. Mr. Vaughn is now shaking and tries to figure out how he's going to spin this to try and shift blame. He begrudgingly decides to hire Mr. Quint and give in to his demands so that he can hunt and kill the shark. Brody insists that Matt come with them because he is an expert on sharks, but Mr. Quint is a douchebag. He thinks that all people younger than him don't really work hard and that Mr. Hooper is just a city boy who spent time counting money his whole life. During their time on the boat, Mr. Quint has Brody throwing chum into the water, and while he's doing that, the shark pops out and bites at him and the chum. Now shit's about to get real because the shark is right behind them. The shark is circling the boat while Matt takes pictures. Mr. Quint goes to get a spear and wants Matt to tie the end to a barrel. Instead, Matt goes to get a tracker to tie onto the barrel. This makes it so Mr. Quint doesn't get a clean shot at the shark. The shark takes the barrel and disappears underwater, so now they have to stay out there overnight waiting for the shark to show up. Which the shark doesn't waste much time because the shark shows up later that night. The shark attacks the boat, causing them to take on some water. The attack subsides for a little bit, but then the shark comes back with a vengeance. They hook the barrels to the shark using spears to try and keep the shark above the surface, but the shark is too strong and takes the barrels under the water whenever he wants. Matt almost gets hurt after they tie the shark to the boat. The shark starts to pull the boat backwards, damaging the engine. The shark seems almost unstoppable. After they cut the lines, the shark dives underwater, hits the bottom of the boat, and almost causes it to flip over. Mr. Quint pushes the boat too hard, trying to get the shark to chase them into the shallow water, where hopefully they can have the advantage, but the engine blows and now they are sinking. Mr. Quint finally tries one of Matt's ideas and they take out the shark cage and Matt goes down. Now, this plan goes bad very quickly. The shark breaks the cage and Matt is trapped inside. Then Matt drops the spear full of the tranquilizer that was supposed to help knock the shark out. He swims out of the cage and hides in reefs for safety. Meanwhile, Mr. Brody and Quint try to pull the cage up to see the damage. The shark then rises out of the water and lands on the sinking boat. The boat is tilted with the nose in the air. Quint and Brody are hanging on for dear life. Brody tries to grab Quint, but he slips right into the shark's mouth and gets munched on. Brody is in the cabin of the boat. The shark breaks through the. Brody is in the cabin of the boat. The shark breaks through, and Brody shoves a compressed air tank in its mouth. As the boat is going down, Brody is trying to shoot the tank and finally hits it. Boom, the shark blows up. Brody laughs hard, and Matt pops up out of the water and they swim back to shore. Now, I always imagined this movie having more talking and less shark action, but I will credit them. From that opening scene of Chrissy getting pulled down, outside of a couple of slow moments, most of this movie is them battling this fucking shark. It's them out on the water trying to figure out how to take this shark down. This movie, for me, 9 out of 10. For what they were trying to do, everything worked. The amount that we got to see the shark, because, I mean, let's be honest, in real life, you don't see sharks all that much. So it makes sense that you wouldn't see this one nearly as much. Dialogue was interesting. The atmosphere, being on a small, rickety, beat up bitch ass boat, trying to hunt down this bigger than usual shark that is a man eater now because it's already murdered, what, 2-3 people. I would say this movie has earned the classic status, and I think it should hold on to it. Now, I don't know what to say about the sequels. I've never seen them. I don't know if I'm actually ever going to watch them because I don't want to ruin my impression of this movie. But ladies and gentlemen, Jaws is it. Jaws is a great movie. I enjoyed it. It's available, I believe, on Netflix. It's available somewhere. If you haven't seen it yet, or if you haven't seen it in a long time, go ahead, give it a watch. 9 out of 10. This movie is phenomenal. This movie has changed my mind. Another successful change my mind. Ladies and gentlemen, next week, I believe, is the next to last week. Hold on. Let me look at my schedule. I believe next week is the last for Horror Watch. I'm slightly disappointed. I've been having fun talking about horror films. Yeah, we got one more show next week, and then we start getting into our November stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you once again for being here with me. I'm not going to play the outro song because I keep getting copywritten every time it goes over to YouTube. So, unfortunately, there's going to be no outro song until November. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for giving me your time. I hope you enjoyed the movies today. Remember, like, comment, subscribe, whatever platform you're on, click bells, all that stuff. Thank y'all for being here again. Stay up, y'all.